Last Tuesday, I watched my former mother-in-law beg for money in the parking lot of a steakhouse where the appetizers cost more than her weekly grocery budget. She didn't recognize me at first, but I recognized her. 20 years of hatred will do that to you. She was standing by the valet stand with my ex-sister-in-law, both of them in clothes I wouldn't have donated to Goodwill. Eleanor's designer handbags were gone. Carol's perfectly highlighted hair had grown out to gray roots. They looked smaller somehow, like people who'd been shrunk in the wash. My daughters were with me. Sarah, 32, had just made chief of pediatrics. Emily, 30, had won her 5th major case that month defending domestic abuse survivors. We were celebrating at the kind of restaurant Eleanor once told me I'd never be able to afford. Then Eleanor saw us. Her face went white. Here's the thing about revenge. The best kind is the kind you don't have to plan. The kind where you just live your life and the universe handles the rest. But let me back up. Let me tell you how I got here. I married Richard when I was 28. He worked for a manufacturing company outside Cleveland. Eleanor and her husband owned commercial real estate, had a big house in one of those North Shore suburbs where the lawns are always perfect. Carol was 2 years older than me, already married with a son. The first year was fine. Then I got pregnant. Eleanor was thrilled. She bought blue baby clothes before we even knew the gender. She told everyone at her church her grandson was coming. When the ultrasound showed a girl, her face went cold. Well, maybe next time you'll have a boy. That should have been my first clue. Sarah was born healthy, 8 pounds 2 ounces. Eleanor came to the hospital, stayed 10 minutes, and left. No flowers. No congratulations. Just, when you're ready, you can try again for a son. He had Emily 18 months later. Another girl. Eleanor didn't come to the hospital at all. I was 29 years old with 2 babies and no help. My own mother wanted to come stay with us, drive up from Cincinnati to help me through those first weeks. Eleanor found out and called me. Your mother doesn't need to come. I'm here if you need anything. But she wasn't there. She was never there. She just didn't want my mother to be there either. Mom came anyway, bless her. She drove up at 5 in the morning, let herself in with the spare key I'd given her, and I woke up to the smell of her making breakfast. For 1 week, I had help. I had my mother. Then Carol drove past our house, saw my mother's car, and called Eleanor. Eleanor called me while I was nursing Emily. I thought we agreed your mother wasn't coming. I needed help, Eleanor. I have 2 babies under 2. You have a mother-in-law. What do you think people will say? That I don't take care of my family? But you don't take care of us. I shouldn't have said it. Eleanor hung up, drove over, and stood in my living room telling my mother she needed to leave. My mother, who'd driven 3 hours to help her daughter, who was running on 4 hours of sleep, who'd been folding laundry while I showered for the first time in 3 days. Mom packed her bag. She kissed my forehead and whispered, "It's okay, honey. You call me when you need me. I'll always come." She left crying. I cried, too. Eleanor stayed just long enough to tell me I was ungrateful, then left me alone with 2 screaming babies. That was the first time I thought about leaving. But I didn't. I loved Richard. I thought things would get better. They got worse. When Sarah was 5 and Emily was 3, we went to Eleanor's house for Thanksgiving. My parents came, too. I'd invited them. It was Thanksgiving, for God's sake. My father shook hands with Eleanor. "Good to see you again. Thanks for having us." Eleanor barely looked at him. Later, in the kitchen, I heard her tell Carol, "Look how they're dressed." I guess Patricia comes by it, honestly. My mother had worn her best dress. My father had worn a suit. They weren't rich, but they were respectable. They were good people. Eleanor served the good china to her side of the family. My parents got paper plates. When I started to say something, Richard grabbed my arm and shook his head. I watched my mother pretend not to notice. I watched my father smile and say everything was delicious. They left early, said they had a long drive. In the car, my mother told me later, she cried the whole way home. My father had to pull over twice. I called that night. Mom, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry, baby. It's not your fault. You just focus on those girls. That's all that matters. But it was my fault. I'd married into that family. I'd brought my parents into that house. I'd let Eleanor humiliate them. That was the second time I thought about leaving. The years crawled by. Every Christmas, every Easter, every birthday, there was some new humiliation. Eleanor bought Carol's son, Brandon, expensive gifts. She gave my daughters $5 bills. When Sarah asked why Brandon got more, Eleanor actually said, "Because he's a boy, honey. Boys are more important." Sarah came home that night and asked me, "Mom, am I not important?" I held her and told her she was everything to me. But she'd heard it now. She'd heard from her own grandmother that she was worth less. That was when something broke in me. Not enough to leave yet, but enough to start keeping track. I started saving Eleanor's text messages. I started recording her phone calls. Ohio's a one-party consent state. I documented everything. I wasn't planning anything yet. I just knew somehow that I might need proof someday. When Sarah was 13, Carol's son needed money for a study abroad program. $20,000 for a summer in Europe. Carol didn't have it. Eleanor didn't want to use her own money, so they decided Richard should pay for it. It's family, Eleanor told us. Family helps family. We have 2 daughters to put through college, I said. Girls don't need as much education. They'll just get married. That's not how it works anymore, Eleanor. Are you telling me how my family works? Richard paid $20,000, taken from the fund we'd been saving for Sarah's college. Sarah, who wanted to be a doctor. Sarah, who studied until midnight every night. Sarah, who deserved that money more than Brandon deserved a summer vacation. I added that to my documentation. That was the 3rd time I thought about leaving. Sarah got into pre-med. She worked 2 part-time jobs to help pay for it because Brandon's study abroad had emptied our college fund. Emily was in high school, already talking about law school. My brilliant, hard-working daughters, Eleanor never asked about their grades, never came to their graduations, but she flew to Europe to visit Brandon twice. Then came the night that changed everything. Sarah was a junior in college. It was finals week. She'd been studying for 72 hours straight, running on coffee and willpower. She called me at 2 in the morning. Mom, her voice was wrong, tight and small. Mom, I can't breathe. I was at her dorm in 40 minutes, found her on the bathroom floor, hyperventilating, shaking. I got her to the emergency room. The doctor said it was a severe panic attack brought on by extreme stress and exhaustion. They kept her overnight for observation. I sat by her bed, watching my daughter sleep, seeing the dark circles under her eyes, the weight she'd lost. She was 20 years old and she looked exhausted down to her bones. Richard came in the morning. Eleanor called him while he was there. I heard his side of the conversation. "Yeah, Sarah's in the hospital." "No, a panic attack. She'll be fine." "Mom, I can't talk about this now." "Yes, I'll call you later." "Iunga?" I asked what Eleanor had said. She just wanted to know if Sarah would still be able to take her finals. That was all. Not, is she okay? Not, what can I do? Just whether Sarah would complete her schoolwork. Carol came by that afternoon. I was in the hall getting coffee when I heard her talking to Richard in Sarah's room. Is she really that sick or is she just being dramatic? Carol, she couldn't breathe. Oh, please. Panic attack. Everyone gets stressed. Brandon's in law school now and you don't see him falling apart. I came back in time to hear her next words. Honestly, Richard, it's 1 daughter. At least you have 2. I stopped in the doorway. Carol saw me. She had the grace to look embarrassed for about half a second. I didn't mean it like that. Get out. Patricia, I just meant get out of my daughter's room. Get out of this hospital. Get out of our lives. She left. Richard started to say something about how Carol didn't mean anything by it, and I told him we'd talk at home. That night, after we got Sarah settled back at our house, I told Richard I wanted a divorce. He was shocked, actually shocked. After 20 years of his mother's cruelty, his sister's contempt, his own passive complicity, he was shocked because of what Carol said. She didn't mean it. She meant every word. And you know what's worse? You were going to let it slide, just like you've let everything slide for 20 years. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Your mother has told our daughters they're worthless for their entire lives. Your sister suggested one of them dying wouldn't matter. And you've never not once defended them. Or me. I have defended you. When? Name one time. He couldn't. I moved into the guest room that night. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney. A woman, Linda Patterson, who specialized in cases involving emotional abuse. She listened to my story for an hour, then asked if I had documentation. I gave her 4 file boxes. 20 years of text messages, emails, recorded phone calls, and a detailed journal I'd kept for the last 5 years. Eleanor telling me my daughters were disappointment. Carol saying girls weren't worth investing in. Richard's bank statements showing he'd paid for Brandon's study abroad, his car, his apartment security deposit. Linda looked at me over her reading glasses. Mrs. Harrison, this is one of the most well-documented cases I've ever seen. I've been preparing for a long time. Then let's make sure you get everything you're owed. The divorce took a year. Richard tried to fight it at first, but he had no grounds. He hadn't committed adultery, but he'd committed something worse, systematic neglect. The judge called it willful indifference to spousal emotional welfare. In Ohio, that's grounds for divorce. Eleanor tried to attend the hearings. The judge barred her after she shouted at me in the hallway. Carol tried to testify on Richard's behalf. Linda played the recording of Carol in the hospital. Carol left the courthouse crying. I got the house, half of Richard's retirement account, 3 years of alimony, and sole custody of Emily, who was still 17. Sarah was an adult by then, but she made it clear which parent she was standing with. Richard remarried 2 years later. Eleanor moved in with him and his new wife. That marriage lasted 8 months. Eleanor was too much, even for wife number 2. After the divorce, I moved back in with my parents for 6 months. My mother helped me figure out what came next. We were in her kitchen one day, and she was making her famous pot roast, the one she'd been making since I was a kid. Mom, you should sell this recipe. People would pay for food that tastes like this. She laughed. Who'd buy an old woman's recipes? Everyone. People want home cooking. They want food that tastes like their grandmother made it. She thought I was joking. I wasn't. Within a month, I'd set up a website. Within 6 months, I had an online shop selling my mother's prepared meals, pot roast, meatloaf, casseroles, homemade bread. I called it Mom's Kitchen. Sarah and Emily helped me package orders at night. They were both in school, both working part-time, but they'd come over after class and we'd work together. Sarah would tell me about her anatomy classes. Emily would tell me about constitutional law. We'd pack meatloaf and dream about the future. The business grew. I hired staff. I opened a commercial kitchen. 5 years after the divorce, I had 30 employees and revenue of over $2 million a year. I'd built something from nothing, with my mother's recipes and my own determination. Sarah finished medical school, became a pediatrician, then chief of pediatrics at Cleveland Regional. Emily finished law school, passed the bar, and specialized in family law, specifically helping women leave abusive situations. I do this because of you, Mom, she told me once. Because you showed me it was possible to leave, to fight back, to win. 20 years after the divorce, I got a message on my phone. From Richard, the first contact in 2 decades. Patricia, I know this is strange, but Mom is in a bad situation. She needs help. Could we talk? I didn't respond. A week later, Carol messaged me. Please, Mom has nowhere to go. Richard's new wife kicked her out. Brandon won't take her calls. We need help. I blocked her number. Then last Tuesday, Sarah wanted to celebrate her promotion. She picked an expensive steakhouse in downtown Cleveland, the kind of place Eleanor used to tell me I'd never be able to afford without Richard's income. We were laughing about something when I saw them. Eleanor and Carol by the valet stand watching the expensive cars pull up. Eleanor's coat had a visible stain. Carol was holding an old purse I recognized from 10 years ago. They saw us. Eleanor's face went through several expressions: shock, recognition, shame, and then something like hope. They walked over. Patricia. Eleanor's voice was smaller than I remembered. You look well. I am well. These are your daughters? They've grown so much. Sarah looked at me. I nodded. She could handle this however she wanted. I'm Sarah. I don't know if you remember me. I'm the disappointment who became a doctor. Eleanor flinched. Sarah, I never. You did. You told me boys were more important. You told my mother she'd failed by having daughters. You gave my college fund to Brandon so he could party in Europe while I worked 2 jobs. Emily stepped forward. I'm Emily, the other disappointment. I'm a lawyer now. I specialize in cases like my mother's. Women who've been emotionally abused by their in-laws. It's a surprisingly large field. Carol tried to speak. Girls, your grandmother has had a hard time. Don't call us girls, Sarah said. We're not your family. We never were. Eleanor was crying. Real tears, probably the first genuine emotion I'd ever seen from her. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I'm sorry. Sorry, I let the word hang there, 20 years too late. I have nowhere to go. Richard won't take me. Brandon won't return my calls. I'm living in a motel. I'm sorry to hear that. Would you consider? No. Emily handed Eleanor her business card. This is for a women's shelter downtown. They help elderly women in financial distress. They'll get you into subsidized housing, help you apply for assistance. They're good people. They help everyone, even people who don't deserve it. We walked away. Got to our table, sat down, and ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than Eleanor's weekly motel rent. Sarah raised her glass. To Mom. Who taught us that being a daughter is something to be proud of? Emily added. And who taught us that you don't owe anything to people who've never treated you like family? I looked at my daughters. My brilliant, successful, kind daughters. The ones Eleanor said weren't worth investing in. The ones Carol said didn't matter. To both of you, I said. My greatest accomplishments. Later, as we were leaving, I saw Eleanor and Carol still standing in the parking lot. Eleanor looked so small. For a moment, just a moment, I felt sorry for her. Then I remembered Sarah on that hospital bathroom floor. I remembered Emily asking me at age 7 if she was important. I remembered my mother crying in my kitchen because Eleanor had humiliated her. I remembered 20 years of being told I wasn't enough, my daughters weren't enough, my family wasn't enough. The moment passed. Sarah took my arm as we walked to my car, not Richard's, paid for with my own money. Emily took my other arm. We walked past Eleanor without looking back. In the car, Sarah asked, was that hard for you? Seeing her like that? No, I said. And I meant it. Not a elle. Sometimes the universe doesn't give you revenge. Sometimes it just gives you justice. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it gives you both. My daughters became everything Eleanor said they couldn't be. My business succeeded beyond anything Richard said I could manage. My mother got to see her recipes feed thousands of people. And I got to rebuild my life exactly the way I wanted it, without asking anyone's permission. Eleanor got what she earned. That's not cruelty. That's just math. As for me, I'm 58 now. Business is good. My daughters are thriving. My mother is healthy and proud. And every single day, I wake up grateful for that moment 20 years ago when I finally decided I'd had enough. The best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living so well that the people who tried to break you can't help but see exactly what they lost. And Eleanor saw it. Standing in that parking lot, watching us drive away in my luxury car, she saw everything she'd thrown away. 3 generations of women she could have loved, who would have loved her back if only she'd been capable of seeing our worth. That's a lonely old age she's facing. She earned every minute of it. Here on the porch, I'd love to hear from anyone who's walked away from family members who didn't treat them right. Was it hard? Do you regret it? Or are you, like me, grateful every single day that you chose yourself?